All right, welcome back to another episode of Marriage Matters with PB&J. We are the J's, the Johnsons, Angela and
Robert, married for 28 years and 4 amazing children.
yes,
And they are working it right now.
yes, they are. Let's meet the P's in PB&J.
I'm Latalia Posey.
I'm Jeff Posey.
We've been married for next month will be 25 years.
Yes, 25 wonderful years.
We have 5 children, and we are loving every minute of it.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And the B's in PB&J.
But I'm Dorian Black.
And I'm MeKael, and we've been married for 20 years.
So we have lots of wisdom around the table today, and we're going to jump right into our topic. We're going to just be talking briefly about unpacking the bitterness and brokenness that we bring into our marriage relationships. I like to think of it as, I'm sure you guys remember standing at the altar, looking at your beautiful wife come up the aisle with her gorgeous gown and her beautifully made up face and all that cute stuff. But I like to visualize also, oftentimes it's things you can't see. We always tell couples now, when your wife and your husband is coming to that altar, picture them dragging a suitcase full of stuff, because they're coming up there looking all cute, but you're not just getting the cute stuff. You're getting all the baggage that comes along with that person. And I know some of us married young, some may have been a little more mature when they got married, but if you remember moving into the house together after you got married, you had bags, you had backpacks, you had suitcases, you had all kinds of stuff. And we unpacked all of that stuff and we put it all together and we did our best to kind of make a home out of the house that we were living in. But at some point, all the stuff that we brought in kind of starts taking a toll
Right.
on the home, on the relationship, and not just physical stuff, but we're mainly going to talk today about the bitterness and brokenness that may have been on the inside of us when we became married that we didn't even know was there. I can think about times when I come home from trips and sometimes I unpack everything in the bag and sometimes I just take out what I need. And then when I roll back around to that bag, I realized something was in there that I didn't even realize I had left in there. I may be running around looking for it. Sometimes even go out and buy it again. But just needing to slow down and take time and examine what's in what luggage are you bringing into the marriage? So the first question we want to talk about is, I want you guys to think back, because I know we're all 20-somethings. Think back to the very first time. Well, I won't say very first, because like I said, we got a long way to think back, thank God. But think back to a time in your marriage where it was pretty clear to you that some brokenness or bitterness or hurt that you personally were harboring was starting to manifest in your relationship. That might take a minute, but
I think mine just flashes in my mind. I can remember it because I can remember sitting in my truck, backing out, thinking, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going somewhere. I think we had been married a matter of months. Maybe close to a year. It wasn't that long.
I was in the dog out that quick.
Yeah, it wasn't long at all. And I just remember thinking And then I remember putting my truck in reverse. I remember like it was yesterday. And I remember putting it in reverse and then backing up and thinking, wait, where am I going? and that's when it hit me that this is not right. And I think you came out and, came to the truck and you asked me where I was going and I didn't know.
Yeah, I thought you were going to Walmart, probably.
Pastor has seen a number of people walking it out from Walmart.
Right. But I remember at that moment thinking I had seen that before. And that's something I'd seen that action before. Just through examples of other people and just thinking, oh my goodness, like that's what I'm doing. And like, I don't want to leave, like nothing, but it was just a reaction based on something I'd seen before. But that was one moment for me. And then, of course, after I realized I didn't want to go, I got out and came on back in my house and hadn't left a day since. Not for that reason.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I can remember when the first year or so of being married, I would, like, if we had a disagreement, I would just go silent. And I recognized that being some brokenness, or the reason why I did that was because of brokenness from my childhood that I didn't properly deal with. And I was the oldest child for 10 years. And then as I, reached my teenage years, my little sister, she was small. So it was like I still was the only child. But when things would happen, I would just go to my room and just be by myself. Mm-hmm. And so I would just be, just me, quiet. And so when things would happen with us, I just wanted to be by myself. I didn't want to talk about it. And I was doing that in my marriage. I wasn't talking. I wasn't sharing. And he was asking me, what's wrong with you? I don't want to talk. And that's what I would respond with. And so that was the first time I realized that.
Well, let me say, when I grew up, it was totally opposite. My mom and dad always were talking, fussing. Look, that's all when nobody quiet. You get it out. It might not be the right way, but it was out. It was coming out. So I'm just used to hold on. I'm used to that.
Yeah.
Like, hold on, what's going on?
So he used to talking,
I'm
used to being quiet by myself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I think that's very interesting. We always, Angela and I always kind of measured whether or not we was doing that based on how we overreacted. Mm-hmm. If we were overreacting to a situation that, so to speak, the crime didn't fit, the crime and the punishment wasn't quite fitting, we were overreacting, we knew that it was about something else. Yeah. We started figuring it out kind of early that, this ain't about this little subject that we were talking about. This is about something else.
Yeah.
And when you start realizing that, then you can start not only pumping the brakes, but you can keep stuff from escalating to the next level. Because you start saying, but you gotta obey that discernment. You gotta obey, God putting that check in your spirit, because if you don't, and you just want to be hard-headed and argue and rebel, and I'm gonna rebel against I'm gonna grieve the spirit, and I'm still gonna make my case, that doesn't go well.
Yeah, right.
You just might as well just humble down. Just like Dad said, I got out the truck. It takes something. Yeah. Because there's people that'll still drive off.
Yeah. Right.
They'll drive off. They're trying to make their point.
Still go.
I wasn't ready for what you said. I wasn't ready then. Hey, they were like, I'm getting this milk.
10 years later.
Yeah. It's cheaper in South Carolina. Man, you don't come back here.
Funny.
Hey, so you're right, but that's kind of how we kind of measure it. I guess if I had to give an example, it would be I would go right back to that classic first example when I think I've shared it in the podcast before, and it was Angela had been cooking, and I'm celebrating the fact I got this new bride, and I'm starting to get, I started seeing this. I'm creating my own family, and it's different from what I grew up in, but I'm like, I'm actually growing up.
Yeah.
It had that. It's dawning on you that you're in a role that you watch your parents be in, and you see you're headed down that same path. You're like, hold up. Now you want some mercy.
Right.
Now you'd rather, because you're the one on the other side. Right. But she was cooking, and Jeff, I wanted to know what she was cooking. So I'm all proud, chest poking out. Yeah. And she, I went back in there and sat down. I'm waiting. I'm like, okay, I'm in the living room. I think the TV's on. And she comes in with that plate and sit down, and she starts eating. And it just wrecked me. You just wouldn't have thought that did so much, but it triggered. I realized I had a whole bunch of brokenness. I want to break that plate. I was saved. But I could still see that entrance door where I came in at. It wasn't that far. I'm like, but anyway, so she came, sat down, and I asked her, like, what you doing? So she was like, oh, I'm eating. I was like, I'm feeling a little resistance. So, and I'll tell you what it triggered in a minute, but how it played out was I asked her what she was eating. I thought she was playing. I thought the plate, she gonna get up and go get the plate. Or it's in there on the table. Mm-hmm. Or it's in the counter or something. Oh, she never got up. And so I said, now my mama always did this. Then I started thinking, my sisters do this. Okay. I said, now, Dad died early, and I started assuming some responsibility at 13. Now I would help. Couldn't pay for much, but I'll help here and there. Take care of this and that. Well, I didn't ask them to do that, but it became a deal of where I respect what you do for this family. Mm-hmm. And it became that language. Yeah. And when she came to sit down, she said the opposite to me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't even know that I was thinking along these lines. Yeah. But once they got provoked, it came up, and how it played out that day was I grabbed some keys. My stepdaddy did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he hit the door. Yeah. And he came back. But it was after a while. And then, I decided I'll go get me something to eat. Here we go.
So y'all see the conversation becoming much bigger than what it was really about. Right.
So I head to the door, and she's asking me what's going on, why because right now you can't quite figure out why it's not matching. Right. Yeah. And so I couldn't figure it out. It was new to me too. Right. Yeah. Right. So that's a common thing. It is when you marry people. You are along for the ride. Yeah. You got to help. In Proverbs, he talks about going for an understanding, or I'm paraphrasing it, but it's like to get an understanding. It's like going fishing. Mm-hmm. You got to keep, Well, maybe it's the wrong bait. Let me try, you try a different lure or whatever the case may be. I'm trying to get an understanding. So sometimes you got to dive in, and you got to kind of get personally detached for a second and stop thinking about how this affected you personally, and be that person's brother or sister in Christ, and help them get an understanding, because sometimes they don't have it. They don't know what words to put to it. They don't even know what they're fighting against. They fighting against generational curse, don't even know they're fighting the generational curse. They fighting the word curse, don't know they're fighting the word curse. But some of them just could grow up and say, you're going to do the same thing, but you don't even know that was a word curse released over your life. And so here you go. I'm at the door. Getting ready to go out the door. She said to me, I'm talking about, she stops everything to say, okay, preacher. Mm-mm. And I felt like she sliced me. Mm. I was like, I knew immediately I was convicted. I knew immediately I wasn't going nowhere. I wasn't leaving. But I was trying to play in my head, how can I still be hard? I said, because if I get weak on her, she gonna play me like this. As we just get started. So this is my self-talk. This is the immature me, but it was my self-talk. And so she left and went on back in the other room. And I took the keys and put them back on the table in my effort to say, we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about this. But my whole point was put the keys down.
Yeah.
Because I already knew I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But was it going anywhere? And it was just so. And, that was gonna be my excuse. I put the keys down, went in to follow her in there, and I was like, I don't know what in the world I'm gonna do. But I know I ain't leaving. And the Holy Ghost that could get me. I was like, something ain't gonna go right if I walk in that door.
Yeah.
I said, let me set myself down.
Yeah.
Need to fast.
Right.
But it worked out.
But even in listening to you talk through that scenario, I can't help but just think about, my example of brokenness. It just kind of started manifesting really quickly for me because I had never lived in the house with my sisters and my mom.
Okay.
My mom got married after I was in college, so that was, it was just a different dynamic being in the house with Robert. Because I really didn't have a good point of reference as far as even how to handle situations like that.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, first of all, we got birth order coming into play and all of that. I'm the baby. Everybody fix my plate. So, hey, it's your plate.
Yeah.
But not even having a point of reference of how to handle him appropriately. Because once he came into our family, whenever we would go visit my mom, she pampered.
Yeah.
He couldn't even pop a Coke can open. She would pop a can open. For just
Wow.
he would sit at the table and everything. It's like before he even asked for it, it was right there. But that was just a part of I guess my experience that I missed because I didn't get an opportunity to see how she would treat her husband and how she would treat. And I had no point of reference. So there was a void there. I came in with all my bags, but there was a lot of gaps in there too of stuff that I didn't really have. And it just started to manifest whenever I had to, and I think too about like times where you first started challenging me on stuff and I wasn't quite ready to be challenged or didn't feel like I needed to be challenged. Just how
is that when I started calling you, I started saying things like, oh, you should have been an attorney. You good. You know how to put the cases together. But I'm just saying, when you going through that, we were finding ways early to label things.
Right.
Because when we see it kind of a role kind of.
Right.
I was like, oh, I see. You could have been an attorney. Now, when I first said it, it was probably derogatory.
Right.
Because I was like, why am I so challenged? And why am I so, what's this? Don't you love me? Won't fix my plate. I'm talking about how the enemy, that brokenness starts to kill. It starts calculating, tabulating.
Right.
And I'm like, you won't do this. You ain't gonna do that. And you tell me I can't quite correct you. I was just trying to help you.
Right.
And she was like, I don't get it. I don't get what you're trying to do, and I don't get why you're trying to tell me this like this. So go ahead.
Right. So I mean, you were hitting the nail on the head, but it was just difficult in the beginning to really just master those male-female dynamics.
Yeah.
Because I just, like I say, I was kind of living my life as I had been living it when I was in the house with three ladies.
Yeah.
So it was quite an adjustment to learn, okay, so he needs to, things that I would think are small, whether it be fixing your plate, ironing your clothes, whatever, they speak way more to him than just, those are just practical daily tasks, you know.
Yeah.
So just talking and working through those things and learning how, I guess the most beneficial thing to us has been when you recognize the void or you recognize the brokenness, you recognize the bitterness, and then you recognize it don't have nothing to do with your spouse.
Right.
You know, they're just the easiest target. They're the only one in the house with you at that time, at that stage. It was just us. And we couldn't just hold on to it and just, sometimes we'll make it our own and say, well, that's just how I was raised. I was raised in that house. We all fixed our plates. And, you know, sometimes we like to use that as a way not to grow. Just an excuse to stay broken. Well, you know, I grew up around women who handled themselves this way. So that's why I did this. And that's why I talk like that. And instead of trying to just be sensitive and listen to what your spouse is clearly saying, now you can continue doing whatever, or being however, now it may not be beneficial.
Yeah.
Not beneficial.
Right. But you can keep embracing it and owning it if you want.
So everybody around the table, what do y'all think about times where you wanted a pass from your spouse? You just wanted a pass. Like, I don't want to be challenged. I ain't trying to grow. I ain't trying to hear you tell me that I need to do better right now. I just want to pass. Just, has that ever happened?
Yeah, I think.
For me, it has not.
Not for you.
You know what? Early in the marriage, yeah, so it's almost like, you said something very important. You said you have to detach yourself.
Right.
And I wasn't willing to do that. Just because you're just so set in your way.
Right.
And you just won't,
Yeah.
you don't want to do better. You don't want to grow. You don't
It's
want,
hard to say it.
You don't want to hear yourself say
right. I'm just been out there.
I want to be stuck, Lord.
Exactly. I remember one time when we first got married. It was a young girl at the church. MeKael had already planned something for the girl, but I'm like, hold on, but you didn't consult me. I forgot what it was, but it was a young girl MeKael was planning to do something for. I ain't gonna call no name. But I had an issue with that because I'm the man. And she didn't consult me. And we had like a little falling out because of that. But in the end she didn't do it. But it was some resistance there. And for a while I was kind of like, no, I'm the man, and just her MeKael, you gotta know MeKael. Like MeKael, her spirit. Now MeKael, she speaks loud in her silence.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it was that the way she carried herself that kind of made me now started to, okay, you know what? This is not really benefiting me. It's not benefiting her, and it's not benefiting this marriage.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
That's good.
I guess I had to detach myself in order to grow.
Yeah.
But I wasn't willing to do that initially.
Right.
But just through her character and how she handled things,
Yes.
it made me sit back without even saying anything.
Bible girl.
Yeah.
Well, I was open with him about some of the things that I experienced growing up. So he was understanding of that, and I didn't after he was like, you got to talk to me. You got to share. You got to say something. When I felt comfortable, like I really can talk to him, then I felt free to open up about why I felt the way I felt, or how I felt when he did or said certain things.
Right.
So once I felt that feeling of safety, then I was able to open up and share. And so every time something happened, I was just share it with him. So it wasn't like just going silent again.
But that's so big, though.
It is.
No, I was just gonna say it's tough, especially traditionally when you used to seeing something and doing something, and then you probably think that's where you should handle it.
Yeah.
Instead of talking with your spouse and saying, "Hey, we're gonna do it differently, or we're gonna do it this way." Yeah. And the other side of that is just, you're so independent. You got two people coming into a marriage, and you've been all right doing things the way you've been doing.
Right.
Now you got someone questioning you, or you do not necessarily. That might not even be the correct word. Or just asking a question, and that used to be me. That's me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just didn't want you to ask me about it. If I decided to do something, hey, we going with it, and you can be like, the man make the decision. When I say traditionally, but with that, when someone question you or ask you why you do that, and they may just be asking, I know My wife was just asking. And sometimes someone would just rise up and mean, why you question me? And cause it would make me change my idea.
Yeah.
When in the past, if I made a mistake or did something, it didn't go well, it'd be all right. I'll fix it down the road. So, but now, you know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, I gotta consult with you.
Right.
Yeah. But it was some bitterness.
Yeah. And that's what we get into wanting a pass. Like, if I could just do it my way. And if you could just cross over and understand why this way is so much better.
Right.
And I think it becomes, I know at least for us, it became a problem. It wasn't necessarily that if you can just do it my way this time. It was if you can just do everything my way. If our lives can look like this.
Oh,
that was our issue.
It
was just like, I already have my mindset.
Yeah.
I got this mindset coming in. This is the mindset we're going to adapt for this marriage. I'm like, oh, wait now. Like, no, I can give you a pass on a couple of things, but just to come in and say our marriage is going to look, you know, unilaterally like this. That was like, oh, no.
It's like adopting a whole philosophy of operation.
Right.
You know, it wasn't just like you said, I'm gonna give you a pass on this. It wasn't like just saying, I'm giving you a pass on me having mercy and loving you and having grace on your character.
Right.
But it's beyond that. It's like adopting a whole philosophy of how we're gonna operate in this marriage.
Right.
And you're like, oh no, I don't want to accept that.
Right.
I want us to revisit that.
Yeah.
But sometimes we think that and us are the same.
Right.
And my wife has been really good at pointing that out to me. Is that, you know, I have acclimated certain cultural norms, ideas, philosophies, and I've made that and me the same.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so when she say something about that, I thought she was talking about me. I'm like, because as much as I didn't want to admit it, I was performing for her. I was still auditioning. I got the job.
You got it.
Yeah.
But I'm still auditioning because it looked like if I do this or don't do this, I'm gonna let you down.
Right.
And you ain't gonna love me. And I done already not been loved before.
Right.
Right.
I've already been rejected before, abandoned before.
Right.
And you sounding like you might sound like them.
Right.
And if you sound like them, at all costs, I'm not fighting not to talk to you. I'm not fighting not to answer your questions. I'm fighting so that I don't know how to balance the risk of safety and vulnerability from weakness and rejection.
And you know, it's so important to be able to recognize that and make the change. You got to be able to say, you know what? This is not, like you said, it's not about my spouse. This is about me and my past experiences. I got to make the change. My spouse is not the one to heal me. This is between me and God and the forgiveness that I need to forgive or to give out to whoever in my past, myself. Because you could go through your marriage functioning, but not free from those past experiences. So you're functioning like, oh, this is so good. But you're still not free.
That's so true.
And you gotta, that's between you and the Lord. Get that together.
And especially if your spouse do something or portray something that's something similar that you didn't like.
Triggers.
That's trigger.
Then you start looking at them like, well.
Like the enemy.
We got to do part 2. What do you
We
think?
definitely have to. We have to do part 2. This has gotten really good, and I'm sure everybody around the table has more comments. So we want to invite you all to come back and listen, and MeKael's going to tell you how you can find us and follow us.
Yes, look, guys, we want you to like, share, and subscribe to our page on YouTube and Spotify. Come back again because your marriage matters.
Yes.
With PB&J. Thank you all for listening.